The way that we are running the engine of capitalism is simply unsustainable. What if the way social media connects people and what they care about could help companies generate greater profits and build a better world for consumers?
Por favor, con un fuerte aplauso a Simon Mainwaring.
Thank you, thank you. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Thank you for answering. That's wonderful. Everyone's so engaged. I want to thank WOBI firstly for inviting me to their stage. This is the first chance I've ever had had the opportunity to speak to you all, and it really is a privilege, and I really appreciate your time, taking your time out of the office to be here, and also if you weren't here, the room would be empty, and that would be really weird. So thank you for being here, and just so you know, I'm going to share some information with you today, but at the end, I'm going to give you an email address, and you just email that, and all the slides will be automatically sent to you. So if you're kind enough to take some notes, know that you're going to get everything sent to you automatically. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end if you've got any questions. And obviously, I haven't met many of you before. By way of background, I'm an Australian ad guy. And you know when you go to a party and there's always one Australian there? Everywhere you go, and you went, how is that possible? I'm one of those guys. I've traveled around the world from place to place as part of my advertising career. I started in Australia, then I worked in London as a copywriter at agencies like Saatchi & Saatchi and Ligas Delaney, and then I worked for 5 years on Nike at Wieden & Kennedy in Portland, and then I was worldwide creative director on Motorola for Ogilvy. So long-time ad guy, so very relatable to a lot of the people in this room and the agencies that you work with. But then in 2001, I went out on my own. And I kind of became like the cleaner from Pulp Fiction. I was sort of the guy they'd call to fix the messaging for companies when they were in trouble. But even that kind of left me unfulfilled. I don't know, has anybody here ever had a day when you're driving to work and you're standing at a bus stop, or you're on the train, or you're in the car in traffic, and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Kill me. Anyone ever had that feeling? Around 2006, 2007, I was that way. I was standing in my backyard in Los Angeles where I live, and I was sitting there going, what am I doing with my life? I kept running around the world looking for fulfillment, being the cool kid working on Nike or running global accounts or whatever it might be, and I wasn't fundamentally happy. And it was at that time that, while I had some professional concerns, I had a personal loss. My father passed away overnight in Sydney in Australia. And I went to the kitchen in the morning, and on the answering machine were 5 messages from my mum and my sister saying, pick up the phone, Dad needs to talk to you. And by the last message, he passed away, and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And with that sort of professional and personal collision going on, I sort of said, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do that's meaningful? And it was at that time I read a speech that Bill Gates gave at the World Economic Forum, his creative capitalism speech. And all he said was something that I think everyone in this room can agree with. He said, government and philanthropy, non-profits, can't fix the world on their own. We need the private sector to help. And as an ad guy of 20 years, I thought, my God, of course. We keep making money and driving our businesses, but also making a mess and not really accounting for that. And now the world's in such a mess, things have to change. And that led to the book We First, and that led to us being here today. And so I'm like you. I'm somebody who comes from the marketing world by trade. We First, my company, works with clients like Coca-Cola and so on. We are deeply in the active business of marketing to consumers out there. And like you, this is where I find myself. We're at the intersection of 3 very, very powerful changes. We've got a new economy, and it's tough. Living in the United States, it's very, very tough for the majority of people. We've got a new customer who is so media savvy and so tech savvy. I've got 2 daughters, 13 and 10, and have you ever tried to get their eyes off their screen on their smartphones? It is like, I cannot resist the appeal of the small screen tractor beam. I mean, this is family time now. Yeah, Dad, that's great. Yeah, no, I love you, seriously. No, it's crazy, right? But also, citizens and consumers are waking up. They're so informed by the internet. They're so connected through social media. So you've actually got protesters in Brazil talking to protesters in Istanbul who were encouraged by protesters through the Arab Spring revolutions. And what we're seeing with citizens encourages consumers to do exactly the same. So did you all hear about, the CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch in the United States came out and said, we don't make oversized clothes because we don't want fat people wearing our clothes because it's not cool? That's what I call CEO suicide. Or, the tragic collapse of the factory in Bangladesh where so many companies make their clothing and those women's lives were lost that worked there. And the consumer response out there, customers are engaged, they're active. And then we've got a third, new technology. I mean, did anyone else, when Google Plus came out, I was like, oh God, another channel. Who here feels overwhelmed by social media sometimes? I definitely do. And it just keeps coming and coming and coming. There was Pinterest, and now there's Fancy, and now there's wedding dresses Pinterest, and now it goes on and on and on. This is your marketplace. As a marketing director, as someone who is steering the outreach of a company to its customer base, you have to get your head around this marketplace or you will get left behind. As we've seen with Borders and as we've seen with Blockbuster Video and so many other companies in the United States, if you don't move with technology, you're not relevant to your customers' lives and you get left behind and you disappear. And technology doesn't care. It just doesn't care. And so this is the context we're living in. There is citizen activism all around the world. I mean, think about the generations, millennials and Gen Zs below them, who've only grown up in a world in which people have technology in their hands that let them have opinions that can be broadcast for free around the world in real time. An astonishing proposition. They don't know the world before this. And that citizen activism is encouraging consumer activism. We know this because we've seen this in the United States, Occupy Wall Street movement, and now so many examples of pushback. There was Bank Transfer Day. There was Netflix that tried to separate out their video streaming. There was Chick-fil-A, which was against same-sex marriage. Abercrombie & Fitch. It goes on and on and on. And then we've got cyber activism. So WikiLeaks and Anonymous. Right now, there's the whole NSA issue going on where basically the government in the United States is listening to a lot of what's going on that we didn't think they were listening to. And now we've got Edward Snowden, who's exposed a lot of this. And now we've got, Anonymous, and we've also got the WikiLeaks founder, Julian, supporting Ed Snowden. This is the reality of our marketplace. It's an era of radical transparency that is being imposed on you as a brand. So you have to really accept the fact that we are now in a transparent marketplace, whether you like it or not. And Mark Zuckerberg put it very well. This is called Zuckerberg's Law. Each year, we're going to share twice as much information as we shared the year before, and the next year we'll be sharing twice as much. Have you noticed this? When Facebook first came out, we're all like, oh my God, this is us at the birth of our child. Here's our sonogram, here's everything. And now we're like, privacy settings, I don't want anyone to see what's going on. There is so much sharing going on, and it's only going to increase. And if you want a snapshot of how the world has changed, 7 years difference. Or 8 years difference between when the Pope was inaugurated, the last one, in the same place as the Pope that was just recently inaugurated. Look at the difference. Same position, same people. That's the reality of the marketplace we're living in. And so I would ask you to consider that there is a profound shift going on in the way that you need to do business if you want to resonate with your customers and help them work with you to build your business and a better world. And the key principle that underscores everything I'm going to show you here is that the future of profit is purpose. Now, I don't mean this to sound well-intended, as if we've all suddenly got to grow a conscience. I'm an ex-lawyer ad guy. I am everything you hate in other people. What I'm talking about are the business drivers that will determine who will be the leaders of the future. And for example, Edelman's 2012 Good Purpose Study, the largest study of global consumers around the world, it tells us that 72% of global consumers would recommend a product, 71% would promote a product, and 73% would switch products if that brand is associated with a cause. That's not theory, that's not conjecture, that is research. At the same time, if price and product are exactly the same, 53% of global consumers said the social purpose of a brand will determine which product they buy. This is the customer's purchasing journey when they're going to buy something in the store. Do they buy your product or do they buy a competitor's product? And as we all know, so much of our world now is about parity technology. If you're in the phone space, we've all got the same technology. You know, if you make a product, everybody has such access to technology that they can make the same product with the same attributes and sort of iterate very quickly. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? What's going to be the tiebreaker? And what your customer out there is saying is it's your social purpose. It's your reputation. It's the thing that will inspire them to talk about you, not just in the real world, but across their own social media channels. And this is the huge opportunity. This is from Edelman Report as well. You know, 87% of global consumers believe that businesses should put, social purpose on the same level as business goals. 83%, but only 28% believe that customers are doing it enough, that clients are doing it enough, that your brands are doing it enough. That gap right there is the opportunity for the leaders of the future. And think about this. In the United States, you can't avoid it. Coca-Cola, open happiness. Pepsi, refresh everything. IBM, smarter planet. Starbucks, shared planet. Patagonia, don't buy this jacket. It goes on and on and on. These companies are telling you how what they do is meaningful to the customers' lives because they know that's what's driving the marketplace and they're authentically committed to the core values of their brands. And these are just some of the companies that are listening. As someone who's been in marketing for over 20 years, if you told me 5 years ago that companies would be falling over themselves to bring their core values to life in a way that has a social impact that's meaningful to their customers, I would have said that's impossible. That's not what drives the marketplace. That's not the mentality of the marketing world, but that's the reality today. So let's look at the return on investment, because all of us, I know every single one of us in this room believes this to some extent because they see it around them. They see everybody staring at their smartphones. They see all the news out there and they realize that people all around the world want companies to make a difference. But you go back to the office and you've got to make the business case to the board of executives and you're the marketing person or your marketing director. You've got to really convince them that this is good for their business. And Jim Stengel, the former global CEO of Procter & Gamble, he did a study and he wrote a book called Grow, and he announced the Stengel 50. And he did a study of 50,000 brands over 10 years of empirical research, B2B, B2C, that were $100 million in size, up to $100 billion in size. And the 50 fastest growing brands in that 10-year period outperformed the S&P 500 in the US by 400%. And there was a direct cause and effect relationship between the purpose of the brand and its financial performance. So again, these are not just business drivers. This is all about the bottom line business case for doing this. And so through the research on the book and all the work that we do at WeFirst, my vision of what the virtuous circle of marketing in the future is, the success of your business will be in direct proportion to the emotional impact on your customers. That's just marketing. Remember 10 years ago, Levi's would show a cool girl and a cool guy and you want to buy some cool, so you buy their brand. There was an emotional connection. But the middle bit is the bit that's different. Your emotional impact will be in direct proportion to the social impact of your company. That's what's different. And then the social impact will be in direct proportion to the growth of your business. And you can imagine, the more you do, the more meaningful you become, the bigger your company becomes, and the more you can do. And that's what we're seeing driving the most successful brands around the world. So let's look at what the leaders in the marketing world are planning to do in response to this data as a guide to give you confidence that this is valid and real. IBM does a study each year, the Global CEO Study, of what CEOs intend to do in the future. And they speak to 1,700 outperforming CEOs. And by outperforming, that means their companies are growing faster than other companies. And they said in the next 3 to 5 years, in order to get closer to their customers, they're going to increase their spending on social media by 256% and decrease traditional media by 61%. That's what 1,700 outperforming CEOs are saying. So if they realize that's the way to stay connected with your customer, and that what does the customer want? They want you to be more meaningful through the social impact work that you do. What are you doing at your company? Do you know who you are? Do you know what your core values are? Are you bringing them to a life in a way that will establish a reputation that will set you apart from your competitors? And this is even true on the B2B side. B2B use of social media is exploding in the United States. And, Marketo's second annual benchmark report said that, between 2011 and 2008, an increase from 74% to 87% in terms of the use of social media by B2B companies. And there's the 5 channels that they're using. So this is across the board. And, even if you're still a little unsure, just watch what happens when we walk outside this auditorium after my speech. Everyone will be like this, checking their phones, checking their emails, texting messages to each other. Or look at what's happening. The lights are too bright, but I can't see it. But there's people on the table like this, just checking their phones, just like this, because there's too much to do right now. Or people are tweeting. That is the reality of the marketplace. I think it's sort of like it's a Target game. We used to go to a movie, and then we got the flat screen TV. And then we got the computer, and then we got the iPad, and now we got the smartphone. They're just trying to focus our attention in a very, very specific way. So, how is this going to be impacted by mobile? Everybody knows how important the mobile marketplace is. And, if I look back, I was working at Wieden & Kennedy on Nike and shooting with wonderful directors when the digital revolution came through. And I was one of those guys in the too tight t-shirt with his feet up on the table going, who's ever going to buy anything from a banner ad? You remember those days? And apparently the internet is a big thing now. And now we're seeing the social revolution come through. And like 5 years ago, we're all like, social media's a fad. 3 years ago, we're like, well, we'll wait and see. It'll come and go. And then now we're all like, oh my God, we need 1 million Facebook fans straight away. Please get them, get them now. The mobile revolution will be just as dramatic. And if you have a look here, this is social media around the world from Insight Consulting, a study done in Europe, and you'll see the relative, countries around the world, how many people log on using social media on a daily basis. So in the United States, 68% of the country log on to social media on a daily basis. And they're not even the leaders. You've got 70% in Australia, 66%, Brazil, 78%, 76%, sorry. It's incredible. 76% of the country is logging on to social media on a daily basis. And if you then go and look, of those people who are logging onto social media, how many of them are following brands? And you'll see, for example, Brazil, the average is 7.8 brands those people are following, in dialogue with them. You've got 4.3 brands that they're actually following and exchanging conversation with, and then you've got 3.4 brands that they're actually, having a more significant dialogue with. And you can see it around the world. This is not going backwards. Ask yourself, can we turn back mobile phones? Ask yourself, can we turn back social media? Ask yourself, can we turn back the web? So if you're sitting on your hands right now at the office thinking, I have an instinct that we should do this, but I don't know how to get it done, and I can't convince the board of directors or the C-suite to do this, you have to be more passionate about it, and you have to make the business case for it, because this will determine who will disappear in the next 3 years and which companies will thrive. And so, if you agree that you need to tell your story in a new way, there's several strategies that I want to share with you from the research and work we do with clients. The first is story transcends technology. Every single brand in this room has access to all the same free tools. And every time someone does something different, they can do, your competitor can do that as well. And I tell you, in my experience, what most brands do is they end up broadcasting their schizophrenia. Have you ever noticed that? They say one thing on television, one thing on Facebook, one thing on a Pinterest board, one thing on a radio ad, and all your customers are standing there going, you guys are crazy. You don't know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, how can they talk to you meaningfully to other people? So it's not about the technology, it's about the clarity of the story you tell. And too many companies are rushing past the story to the telling. As I said, 3 years ago, everyone's like, well, should we use social media? And now they're like, oh my gosh, we want to use social media and we want to get on Instagram or Vine or Twitter or Pinterest or whatever it might be. And they're rushing past the story to the telling. But the two go hand in hand. So if you ask yourself, I agree that we do need to tell our story in a meaningful way to resonate with our consumers so that they actually want to promote us to other people through these new free channels they have. Don't rush to the technology. Start with the story and really interrogate who you are. Because, you have to tell a story worth telling to be a story worth sharing. People they're always looking for that viral video, and they wonder why the cat video gets 5 million shares and your beautifully orchestrated brand film doesn't. You have to tell the story in a way that's going to be meaningful to them, and it has to be a compelling story. And too many of us, I've even noticed this with our own brand, WeFirst, as soon as you put that client hat on, you can't help but talk about yourself in a self-directed way. I want to tell you what's so good or great about us. And we're marketing people, we should get this. But we, even as clients, when we put our client hats, we sort of default back to convincing someone what's so good about us instead of really enlightening them as to what value what we do can bring to their lives, why we are meaningful, why we can really enhance their experience of life. And so the real power of social media is not the fact that I could reach out to you, sir, and I could sell you something, a t-shirt. The real power of social media is for us to tell the story of my t-shirt company in a way that you want to share it with all your peers. It's not, old media like television was one to many. One television ad, and if you're not in the bathroom or making a cup of tea, it'll reach many people at once. Social technology is all about one to many. And that's the dynamic you want to leverage. You need to inspire your entire customer base to be an extension of your marketing arm. And, in order to really do this, you have to be authentic. We are marketers, we are clever, we can manipulate things, but in this era of radical transparency, if it doesn't ring true, those people you are going to reach to hopefully inspire them to share your story will share your lack of authenticity. For example, the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. People didn't want to know the company that was responsible for the drilling rig that led to the oil spill. They wanted to know the name of the boat that the CEO of BP was on in the British Isles sailing while this problem was going down. Do you remember that? People get very, very passionate when something is going wrong and they get the opportunity to expose it. So how do you do it? How do you define your brand story in an authentic way? Here's 3 filters that might be meaningful or useful to you. The first is in the abstract. You've got to ask yourself, what's your promise to the world? If you sit there and go, all right, in 5 or 10 years' time, the world will be a different place because, what is that? What difference will you have made? How will the world be better off? How will your customers' lives be better off because of you being there? So that's in the abstract. In a competitive sense, ask yourself, what are you the only of? We all do many things well. You've all got competitors who can make similar claims. But there's something that you do that is different to all of them. Because no two people are alike, and no two teams are alike, and no two brands are alike. And force yourself to answer that question. And then finally, a skills-based filter. When you're at your best, what are you doing? You ever had that day where you go to work and your team does something, or it's a pitch, or you do a product launch, and it goes really well, and you're like, high five? Or if you're doing it on your own, you're high-fiving in the mirror, and you hope no one sees you doing that. Am I the only one that does that? Anyway, when you're at your best, what are you doing? What is that thing that is unique and proprietary to you? And when you ask yourself these type of questions, you start to get some themes developing, and you move away from what we all know is kind of business speak. We're the best at this and that and this and that, which means nothing to anybody. All of us have marketers have made most of the language we want to use meaningless because we have all used it and abused it for so long. But there is a truth at the heart of your company that you need to excavate so that you can inspire your employees to promote your brand and also inspire your customers to promote your brand. And if I had to say there's one principle that you should put as a filter over everything you're doing moving forward, is you need to shift from being the celebrity of your customer community to being its chief celebrant. That means you stop talking about yourself, but talk about how you're going to make a difference to your customers' lives. And when you do that, the future of profit is purpose, because through articulating your purpose in a meaningful way, you will inspire engagement, you will drive sales, and you will increase your profit and be a leader in the future. So what does this mean to shift from being the celebrity to a celebrant? I want to give you 3 examples. Coca-Cola, can't beat the real thing, to open happiness. Pepsi, the joy of Pepsi, to refresh everything. Or even Livestrong, the Livestrong Foundation, over to it's about you. And we're working with Livestrong, WeFirst is right now, and it's a very, very interesting exercise in learning what happens when the integrity of a brand is compromised. And how do you recover from that? And how do you excavate what's authentic about the brand? And then how do you reintroduce yourself to the market? So, this is that shift from getting off yourself. And I know this is a horrible thing to say to marketers and brand leaders, but it's not about us. It's not about us, and it's still pain. It's not about us anymore. We have to get onto our customers and what would be meaningful to their lives. So let's look at a couple of examples. As I mentioned, there is Open Happiness and Refresh Everything and Starbucks Shared Planet. Whole Foods, they've come out with a full manifesto in the B2C marketplace through what John Mackey and Raj have written in their book, Conscious Capitalism. So they've come out and given a whole vision for the future of capitalism at large, which speaks to what they do as a brand. In the B2B marketplace, we've got IBM talking about Smarter Planet. And I want you to examine what they're doing. Some of this looks simple, effortless, basic, but it's not. It's very strategic. And I'll explain why. Smarter Planet allows IBM to own the world and smart. So they can talk about smarter energy meters, smarter transportation, smarter cities, whatever it might be. Or Coca-Cola owns Open Happiness, which they own the physicality of opening a beverage, and they own probably the most important emotional property out there, happiness. What does your company own? What do you want to own in the category? Think about washing powder. You've got whiter whites, gets out the toughest stains, lasts longer. Our whites stay white. I've been married over 20 years now, can you tell? Our whites stay brighter longer. They're all different ways of looking at the same emotional pie in the washing detergent category. In your category, what do you want to own? So, for example, we first had the good fortune to work on the last launch of the Prius. Now, the Prius is all about cars, a balance between a car and nature. And we think we should try and own that category. So how do you emotionally own the idea of a balance between nature and a car? Well, the campaign was harmony between man, nature, and machine. So you own the emotional property of harmony, which we all aspire to. But then harmony between man, nature, and machine means you can talk about man, the creature comforts of the car, nature, the environment, and machine, 52 miles per gallon, economy, and also the solar sunroof and all those other elements. So these are all very strategic. So what does your company own? If you could make one note right now in terms of your category, and it has to be emotional, and it has to be a fundamental human property, what does your company own? And let's look at how it's brought to life through products. So P&G owns Pampers. Who here's a mum or a dad? Who's a parent? Parents? Okay. We've all bought diapers, right? It's one of the glamorous things about having children. Can I tell you, one day I was walking down the street when I was working in Portland still, and I'm like that proud dad. You know that new proud dad that really wants to subtly let everybody know that you're a dad and that's my kid and all that? So I'm walking down the street like this, bouncing my kid, and I'm like, something really smells bad. I don't know what it is. Something really smells bad. So anyway, I take my daughter off, and we check the diaper and everything else like this. Everything's fine. Put it back up and bouncing along like this. And eventually I realized that before I changed the diaper before, she had done what children do, and I'd been bouncing it out of her onto my shoulder on the back here. So this was right here. Anyway, parental moment, true story. But with Pampers, you go in to buy a packet of diapers. And if you walk up to the shopping aisle and you see Pampers there, and every packet of Pampers funds a tetanus vaccination for a mother or newborn child in the developing world. And in the last 4 years, they've funded over 33 million vaccinations, saving an estimated over 100,000 lives. Is that meaningful to you as a parent? Is there an alignment between the core values of the brand and why you want the product? And does that make a difference in terms of whether you purchase it or not? And that's how you bring it to life, through a product. Or even pizza. How do you do this with pizza? I mean, the people at Pizza Hut were sitting, oh my God, there's all these social gamers out there. People are spending hours on Zynga games. How do we reach them? Well, they did a partnership with the World Food Program that when you bought a pizza, there was a barcode on the box. You scan that barcode. It allows you to buy limited edition avatars, these little characters to go in your game like Farmville or Mafia Wars or whatever it might be. And the proceeds from those sales went to the World Food Program. So an alignment between making pizza and food, reaching social gamers in a meaningful way, and making a contribution in alignment with the core values of the brand. Two very different examples, but this is how you bring your core values to life through your products. Or, you know, one of the great companies out there that is always pushing the conversation forward is Patagonia. So in the States we have Black Friday, where everybody waits overnight to trample each other and to get the thing that they don't really need. Do you have that over here as well? And it makes them miserable afterwards because they just feel empty. It's a wonderful institution. On that day, Patagonia launched Don't Buy This Jacket. They actually told their customers, please don't buy our stuff. Instead, bring it in and we'll repair it. And they were very nervous internally. I've had the good fortune to speak at Patagonia, and they were very nervous internally as to whether that would work or not. But the goodwill that earned from their customer base, because it showed the authenticity of their commitment to change in the environment, was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And even if you're a smaller company, not everyone is as big as Coca-Cola. You know, Tom's have the glasses, you know, where if you buy a pair of glasses, you fund a cataract operation, or you actually get another pair of glasses for a person in need in the developing world, and also obviously the shoes where they started. There's another t-shirt company there called Sevenly, and what they do is each week they crowdsource from their customer base what they want a percentage of the sales to go to. So think about that for a second. They not only constantly reinforce the core values of the brand, but they constantly have a reason to re-engage their customer base and say, what do you care about? So that talks about how the sales from that week went to put clothing on, you know, for children in Bolivia. So this also helps you with content creation and customer engagement. And, you know, companies now, if you wonder how you do that yourself and how do you architect it, there's platforms that you can just plug into. These are 4 platforms. You've got eGood, you've got Mulu, you've got Social Vibe, you've got Social Vest, and all you do is sign up on that platform, choose the non-profit that you want it to go to, and when anyone buys your product, a percentage that you have chosen goes towards that cause, and you can start marketing. So you don't have to build this all from scratch yourself. There's no barriers or obstacles to this. So what does this look like? I mean, Nike is arguably the most, you know, highly regarded marketer in the world, and I had the real privilege of working on their brand for 4 years. Let's look at what this strategy looks like for Nike. So they've launched their Better World campaign. So Nike wants to own better and the world. And that comes to life through their heritage films. It comes to life through their individual campaigns like Designed to Move. And really, they're telling the story of how they're making the world a better place. And when it comes to their products, they are using, you know, recycled PET bottles to make shirts and so on, and creating marketing campaigns around that. When it comes to sharing their IP, you know, they've got the environmental design apparel tool, which shows their competitors how they actually reduce the carbon footprint of their supply chain so that they can reduce their carbon footprint as well. And what I'm really talking about here is, if you want to, here's the challenge. If you want to be a global leader in a connected and mutually dependent marketplace, you can't talk about yourself. You can't say we're the best because the marketplace is saying we're in it together. So what do you say? Well, what Nike is saying is, we are more committed than anybody else to the issues you care about, even above and beyond our own bottom line. And that's how you establish leadership in a mutually dependent and intimately connected global marketplace. So that's what Nike's doing. Then you've got to be ready for the challenges from consumers. Consumers are going to track you down and expose you if they can. And their muscles are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So what do companies do? Timberland, they did pop-up stores in New York City where they actually built the stores out of recycled bottles. And you could go into those stores and look at the product, but you could buy a virtual tree at the computer, and a real tree would be planted for that virtual tree you bought. Or even charities have to be responsible. If you have a foundation at your company, Charity Water, one of the leading charities in the United States, they use Google Maps to show you the actual wells that are being dug with your contributions. I've donated my birthdays, my last few birthdays, to Charity Water, so instead of getting gifts from my friends, I ask my friends to volunteer donations, and that goes to Charity Water. And I just got a picture from them the other day saying, here are the latrines that you built in Ecuador. I built latrines. But latrines are hygiene, they're sanitation. It is access to clean water. It stops women and their children doing water portage for 3 or 4 hours a day and missing out on their education. This is all meaningful stuff. But they use this technology to do it with transparency. And they send you the physical location of where your dollars went. Or accountability. Patagonia, the Footprint Chronicles campaign they have. If you buy a jacket from Patagonia, you can put in the SKU number and you'll see videos about where it was made, what is the carbon footprint, how much tracking was involved, and if you see in the bottom of that slide, the good, the bad, and what we think. So they actually are telling you what's bad about what they're doing and how they're going to improve it. So that is, what that is? That's risk mitigation. You can go to your CFO and say, managing our reputation in a positive sense is incredibly valuable from a bottom line point of view to our business, but also risk mitigation, getting ahead of any accusations that could damage our brand, that is also incredibly valuable to the bottom line of our business. And I want to share with you something that took me a long time to learn because, we've been working with 10 or 15 large brands a year, and eventually you kind of get this pattern recognition going on, and I want to share these insights with you. How do you architect a community around the good work you're doing? And here's how. The first thing is you need to have a story around your mission. In the top left-hand corner there, a story around your mission, a singular, consistent story that you're going to tell for an extended period so you don't waste your marketing dollars broadcasting your schizophrenia. And then, secondly, you have to see each of the tactics, like it might be a product launch, it might be an event, it might be a special promotion. You need to see each of those tactics as chapters in that longer story arc. And then, in the bottom left-hand corner, you need to avoid the number one mistake that companies make, even if they're doing most of this right, is they suffer community attrition, which means I reach out to you, I've got engagement, I sell product, this is great, the 6 weeks is over of the launch, oh my God, I'm exhausted, that's fantastic, that's right, bye, and they all leave. And then for the next marketing tactic or campaign, you've got to build all that over again. Your community has disappeared. That engagement has disappeared. Instead, when you have that engagement, as soon as you're reaching a peak, you need to upgrade them to something else and reward them. It might be a special discount. It might be an offer they can offer their friends. It might be information on the new collection of a product that's coming out that nobody's heard of before. But whatever it is, you need to maintain that community over time, and that's when you get a self-sustaining community. And the goal of this is very simple. Who here is in a relationship? Who here has got a significant other? Husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, okay? Now, who here has 2 relationships going right now? I mean, shit. No. Who here? Hello, darling, that's not true. Who here has 3 relationships? These lights weren't so bright, I could see the guy at the back going, yeah, I got 3. I was in Brazil speaking in December, and I asked the question, who here has got 10 relationships? And some guy at the back is just like this. And you almost believed him just from the whole hip thing, but anyway. But you know how hard it is to maintain more than one relationship? You've got to maintain hundreds at one time now. You need to scale intimacy. That is your challenge. The future of profit is purpose. You need to be the celebrant, not the celebrity, with a view to scaling intimacy. And without that, you're going to come across as just another broadcast channel, talking about yourself on all these different social media channels. And not only will you miss out on the engagement, but your customer community will go, you know what, they're not even listening. I don't like them because. And so let's look at some of the ways that it's being done. Procter & Gamble around the Olympics. Did anyone see this celebrating moms spot? And everyone's like, oh, it's so true because we work so hard all the time. Actually, I'm being Mr. Mum right now. My wife is doing a course, so I've got the kids on the weekend for 8 weekends. It's really hard, guys, and it's really tiring. So Mr. Mum right now. But they created that film, and that is tracking, done by visual measures of the views of that film. They weren't sitting there saying how P&G is great because of what it does or what it makes. They were celebrating moms and everything they do behind the scenes to get those athletes to the game, the unsung heroes. What does that show? It shows that they're listening to their customer community. It shows that they know their audience. It shows that they care, and they're willing to put their energy and resources in celebrating their customers instead of being the celebrity of their customer community. Or, you look at what Coca-Cola's doing with Arctic Home, where, obviously the polar bear is so iconic in terms of the branding of Coca-Cola, and so they're working with people to protect their habitat. Or, Levi's has always been about cool. You know what's cool now? Using less water. So they've got campaigns where they say, start small, think big, and they make suggestions about turning off tap waters, turning off the tap when you're brushing your teeth, taking shorter showers. We're in this together. Here are all the things that we can do together to reduce water usage on your end, because we're reducing it on our end. Because here's the thing. Every single company is going to be under increased scrutiny with regards to their social license to operate. And what that means is their permission that people give them around the world to do business. If water scarcity becomes this incredibly acute issue in the developing world, which it will, and you're wasting 80% of the water you use in the product you make, you're going to be in trouble. Because people are living or dying on the basis of lack of access to a resource that you're wasting. So you need to work out what your core values are and what you're committed to, because as there are more and more wealthy people in the world and more people on the wrong side of the prosperity equation, there's going to be more and more scrutiny on what your brand does, what it stands for, how accountable you're going to be held, and whether, as part of the collective consciousness of your customer community out there and society at large, whether they want you to exist anymore. And they have the power to put you out of business, because every single day they get the chance to vote in the shopping aisle. Do I like this brand or not? Have anyone here seen the new app called Boycott? Boycott, B-U-Y-C-O-T-T. It allows us all in a shopping aisle to scan the barcode of what we're buying, and it shows you the parent companies and their social impact record and their treatment of employees. We are becoming incredibly informed as consumers, and the technology is putting the tools of disintermediation in their hands, so they can cut you out of the equation, not just because they don't like you, but because they actually have the information behind it. And so companies like Coca-Cola and Unilever are telling their story in innately shareable ways. Coca-Cola is celebrating the individuals around the world whose lives have been improved through their investments in their community. Unilever is explaining their commitment to the value chain, and it's become the core of their business. Sustainable living has become the very platform of the entire organization at Unilever. And when you use these strategies correctly, you get a self-sustaining community that drives profits and impact, because you're telling a story over time. Every tactic reinforces that story. Every tactic is an upgrade of community engagement, and over time, because of the meaning you have generated in that person's life, they will not only buy your product and be loyal, they will talk about your brand to other people. And that's the power of social media. It's not the ability to reach someone, but to inspire them to talk about you to somebody else. And if you took a holistic view of your brand at the end of all of this sort of strategizing, you've got the brand at the top, you've got purpose, you've got your manifesto, your core values, and then down the bottom, you've got all these different social media channels. But there is complete alignment and integrity. And I can tell you, through our work we do with some of the biggest brands in the world, this is what they're doing. Because we all know this in this room. What happened in the last 10 or 20 years? We got siloed, and we got job titles, and we got different budgets, and we got different regional campaigns, and we are all fractured. When you walk into most brands these days, it's like walking into a house of mirrors. You're like, oh my God, I think that's the brand over there. All we're trying to do now is create seamless storytelling to inspire our customers to build our brands with us. And that's the architecture you need. And again, coming back to the bottom line benefits, what's this going to do for your company? Is it going to put money in your pocket so you can grow? And so will it, by extension, add value to what you do as a marketing director or a director of a company? Well, here's from the Edelman 2013 Good Purpose Report. This is what, global consumers are saying. Not only will 76%, on the right-hand side there on the blue, and 76% and 73% buy, recommend, and share positive opinions about your products and experiences. Here's what's more interesting to me. Look on the other side. 44% will refuse to buy your product and services. 44% will criticize it to others. And 44% will share negative opinions and experiences. That's really scary. They didn't have the opportunity to do this before. They didn't have free media channels. They didn't have a mother who's a connector that has 300 other mother friends on Facebook, or thousands of people on Twitter, or bloggers that can reach any number of people. This is the reality of the new marketplace. And in the B2B world, Marketo's report shows us that by doing social media engagement, B2B companies, 69% gathered new marketplace insights. 60% improved their search rankings when people are looking for something. 56% acquired new partnerships, and 53% developed loyal fans. So I cannot stress this enough. This is not about technology. I'm not a technology geek. I don't know how to code. I don't know anything about the web and behind the sort of interface wall that you have. This is about reputation management and word-of-mouth advertising, and the new tools that exist to allow us to build it or to mitigate risk. That's all this is about. It's nothing new, it's timeless, and we can't get preoccupied with the shiny squirrel of technology. Whatever comes out next after Vine, or there's now video on Twitter and all, it doesn't matter. What matters is what story are you telling, what reputation are you building, and how well are you inspiring other people to talk about you. And, TBWA, the big ad network, just came out with the Future of Social Activism report, and it was a global study, and they found with millennials, and by the way, millennials are not kind of slackers sitting in front of their laptops in coffee shops anymore. They're in their early 30s, they're assuming management positions, and they will be the business leaders of tomorrow. And they found 71% would be more likely to purchase from a company that supports a cause they care about. 76% would think more highly of a company that supports a cause they care about, and 66% would seek employment from them. So this even comes down to the ability to attract and retain top talent, which we all know is incredibly difficult. So we're finally at the point where social media penetration and mobile penetration is at a point where really we've got bottom line metrics to show that this is valuable to our business. And we're finally at a point where companies of sufficient size are investing in projects of sufficient scale to generate data that is sufficiently meaningful that we can make the business case to our boards and to leadership that this is what we need to do. Because it was really hard to do 2 or 3 years ago. But now the numbers are there. So if I had to give you 3 key principles to think about: stop selling and start caring. All of us innately care about each other. When you looked at the earthquake in Haiti and you could see the people trapped between the floors of the buildings and you could text a donation to the Red Cross, that touches our innate empathy for each other. And then there was the Pakistan floods, and then there was the tornado, and all these tragedies going on. There's flooding going on in India right now. We are all connected now in a way that was unimaginable before. But we're connected through the heart. Technology is just the facilitator. And if your business puts its shoulder behind its core values, you will connect in a way that is so profound that will inspire them to promote your business to other people. And as silly as it sounds, we'll also feel a lot better about what we do as individuals, because cause marketing, foundation work, CSR initiatives aren't this thing we do over here once we've done the real business of business and after we've really discharged our fiduciary duty to our shareholders. It's our core business. And that's that third pillar of social change we need with government and philanthropy. Be the celebrant, not the celebrity. If you talk about yourself ceaselessly on these new channels, you will be ignored and you will be criticized, and it will hurt your business. And thirdly, scale intimacy. I wouldn't recommend any kind of real-life modeling in real life by going and trying to manage several relationships at once. Keep it online. But you need to be able to reach out to people and connect with them on an intimate level and lead with listening and then respond to them in a meaningful way. And you'll soon start to segment out your audiences. You'll soon start to see what they care about. You'll soon see, through all the analysis and the free tools that we have now, what things resonate and what things don't. You'll soon learn how to co-create with your customers content specific to each of the different channels. What should I do on Facebook? What should I do on Pinterest? What should I do on Vine? Facebook is introducing videos soon that are going to be 15 seconds in length. Why? Because these videos are going to be ads. And they're going to be ads that are going to have to be meaningful in the context of social media. So everybody's eyeballs are migrating to their smartphone and to their social channels. And we need to accept the new business drivers and create content in a way that will be well received in that marketplace and authentic. So what I'd like to do is open up to questions. I believe people can come to the front. Whether you're a B2B or you're a B2C company, I would like to invite you to sort of come to the front and ask your questions. There's two things I'd like to share. One is, if you're interested in these slides, just email